Hey everyone, Joe DiFrancesco here, innovator of Self-Coaching Masters, a course designed for 6 to 8 figure business professionals to learn the skill set, to self-coach themselves, to break through any personal professional block at any time, all learned within 8 weeks. And I'm doing this quick interview here with Phil, who's worked with me in the past, here and there and together. And he was gracious enough to join the Zoom meeting and answer a few questions. Normally, my interviews are longer, but for expedience purposes, I've broken it down to about 5 or 6 questions, and I actually put them on little index cards because I didn't want to get confused with the other meetings that I have. So welcome, Phil. Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely.
And
my pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks, Joe.
Letting me use your mug and your answers in whatever it is I need to use it in.
For what it's worth.
I promise to keep it clean. So anyway, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself briefly, the business that you're in, what it is you do?
Yeah. So, I guess, what's important, I think, from your perspective, Joe, is that, again, I've known you for years. And when I first met you, I had a full-time job, which I was not crazy about. And I wanted to make a transition into not just consulting, but also work that I enjoyed. And I always had a strong background in web development and computer programming. And, one of the things that we've talked about over the years was kind of breaking out onto my own. And, it was, I guess, about 4 or 5 years ago, right before the pandemic, when I kind of was transitioning out of full-time work into contracting. And I remember just having some key conversations with you about some self-actualization, about kind of being intentional about following what I was focused on. And it's kind of like, being a technical person and usually focusing on the nuts and bolts of programming. It was nice to kind of get into work with you to get into a different headspace about, focusing on soft skills and kind of the bigger picture.
That's cool. I appreciate that. And so really, so that was kind of the block that you had there. You made the transition just from whatever working with us for the time that you work with us. So why did you think that I was a good fit for you rather than some of the other self-help courses that were out there that you might have taken, read about, or what resonated more with you?
I guess in more of a concrete way. So, in my business, a lot of it is about, let's say, I'll give you some examples. Some, let's say I'm doing an e-commerce website for hair products, which I did when I was working with you. And I guess the ability for you to kind of zoom in and zoom out, right? And so, like, I could talk to you, even though you're not an expert in my field, you are an expert in your field. And a lot of the things that I talk about, whether it's, selling hair products or selling bus tickets or things that I've done concretely, you were able to immediately kind of grasp the core concepts of, let's say, selling tickets online and the challenges of, building a system that would, route people from Paramus, New Jersey to New York, to New York City, right? And so I was able to tell you kind of the concrete aspects of my system. And even though you didn't have direct experience with them, you mapped them to your experience, and then you were able to kind of see, where I was, in the weeds. You were willing to go into the weeds with me, and you kind of had to understand where I was at, and then kind of use your experience to kind of pull me out of the weeds and see, okay, that's fine. You can continue to do your business, but how is it bringing value to myself? How is it getting me to where I wanted to be with my goals, which were concretely to have my own consulting and contracting business. And that's what I kind of appreciated, that ability to zoom in and zoom out.
Right. You're willing to do the work in that aspect too. So, people always say, think outside the box. And my idea is that you need to just expand the box you're in, because
right.
The term thinking outside the box is what scares people a lot. So you knew where your playground was. You just needed to beef up the equipment in the playground, make it a little nicer for yourself. And I think,
and you were willing to go into my playground with me, right? Like, you weren't like, oh, Phil, I don't care about this, or this doesn't make sense to me. You were willing to kind of, trudge along for lack of a better word, in my world. And then I could see the lights go off in you, and you could kind of see where I was, where I was falling behind, where I wasn't getting it. And then you were kind of, again, helping me to think outside the box, right? And then the steps were clear to me, right? So the terms of, they're abstract terms, think inside the box or think outside the box. But you were able to map my concrete experiences with e-commerce into, oh, Phil, this is how you can incorporate. This is how you can, this is how you can work with folks to send invoices. This is how you get a corporate accountant as opposed to a personal accountant, right? These are all very concrete actions that were outside the box for me, that were kind of, kind of just trivial or normal for you.
Right. Well, that's only because I had a lot of business experience being in business prior, but you had the initiative and the ability, you just didn't know what direction it was. So
Yep.
if that information helped you out while we were doing the work together, how has it helped you now on your own?
So then making that move, right? So kind of pulling myself out of the weeds, right? Well, and they're not really weeds. I mean, I think I had a firm foundation and I was grounded, but I had to, I had to kind of think outside the box. And again, you demonstrating that there were concrete actions that I could take, right? And then once, and they were unusual for me and something that I wasn't used to, right? It can be a scary thing to say, oh, I'm used to having, and again, I'll give you my example. I'm used to having my taxes taken out by a W-2 every week. It's a scary thing to say, I have to pay the government every quarter, and if I don't, I go to jail, right? And you're like, well, so what? And so then, and then I go and do those things, and now it's not just that that I've done them, but also I have the confidence, right, to say that I can do these scary things or things that are unusual or outside the realm of my experience. And now I have the confidence to do it myself, right? And so now I don't have to ask you, I don't need to go to you every single time, right? Now I have the skill of kind of pulling myself up by my bootstraps. And then, again, we check in with each other on a regular basis, but it's not like you need to spoon feed me every time, although I did appreciate that you did it the first time.
Well, I guess it's safe to say that, and like with most people, you have these unfounded fears that really don't exist. They're
Yes.
realizations of things. They're suppositions on your part. I do it in my course. That a real fear is like, somebody's got a gun to your head, and a fabricated fear, which is false evidence, is you dwelling on something that may or may not even occur yet and thinking the downside of it, as opposed to concentrating and focusing on those assets that you already have that can help you complete the task. So now you don't need to constantly make a referral to somebody or something to know that you can do that, because now you've had prior experience doing it. So now you just do it in your everyday life. Well, that's good. I'm glad that that's helpful for you.
Absolutely.
I'm just gonna probably just wrap it up real quick because I don't want to keep you too long. And my main thing is, if there was somebody that was on the fence and they were thinking about booking a call with me or talking to me or using my services or getting some advice or taking the training and taking the course, what would you say to them if they were on the fence?
I would say that if you go, a lot of people are willing to give you advice. But you're the only person, I think, who is willing to actually, kind of go hand to hand with somebody and take their particular experience, and I mentioned some of the details of my experience. And it's not like, oh, Joe's only good for people who want to go into the e-commerce consulting business, right? Like, I've seen you do that with other people in realms that are completely outside your experience. And I think that's your key value add that is very unusual. And I would say, right, you can pretty much talk to anybody in any business and give them concrete next steps based on what their area of expertise is.
Cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. Again, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you for sure. You know that. And I'm glad we have this relationship and that you showed up tonight. So, all right, Phil, take care. Thanks again. I'll speak to you soon.
Absolutely. Looking forward to talking
Be
soon,
well.
Joe. Take
All
care
right,
now.
man. Bye.
Bye now.